I want to start with a story. It's not a true story, but it's a story. So the Pope died and went to heaven. And he was met by St. Peter at the pearly gate, and St. Peter smiled at him and said, "You were such a good Pope. Tell me what would make you happiest, and I will see that you get it." And the Pope was thrilled. He's like, "I would like to read the original words of God. I would like to read his instructions to the people for living a godly life. Who knows how they might have changed through the years?" And Peter said, "You are in luck. You are in luck. We have a library here containing all the original works of all of the religious writers of every religion." And the Pope went into the library and settled down to read. And a few hours later, St. Peter could hear these terrible moans and groans and wails coming from the library. And the Pope staggered out, just bereft and just really upset. And holding his hands in his head, he blurted out to St. Peter, "I can't believe it. The word wasn't celibate, it was celebrate." So, today I want to talk about our bodies. And actually, in the notes from our organization to all the ministers, this lesson is supposed to be about sex, and I think we can broaden the topic just a little bit, but we'll cover that too. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the service, the lessons in the month of August are about challenging the status quo, not only as an individual, but as a community. And today, we're going to kind of step outside of normal spirituality and tap into sensuality as a spiritual practice. Are you game? That would change the status quo, wouldn't it? That would, right? So let's start with some of the spiritual basics about our bodies. The Science of Mind philosophy is based on the spiritual truth that everything is God. Everything is made up of God energy, created out of this one source of life, and the energy is for good. And so the very first basic principle is that our bodies are magnificent. They're magnificent. Our bodies are a gift to be appreciated and loved. And the body you have right here and right now is an expression of this divine energy. And another word for expression is form. So your body is a form that expresses God or life in an individual way. Ernest Holmes says this: "We are so intimately connected with the universal creative God power that it is impossible to get away from it. Hence, we never have to wonder whether or not we are in touch with it. It is where we are, and we are in it. It is in us, it is around us, and flowing through us." That is what the founder of our philosophy had to say about that. And what he's saying is that the divine intelligence that lives in your body is life itself. It's an energy that you can feel buzzing in your fingertips right now. An energy, if you put a slice of life underneath the microscope, you would see it pulsing and vibrating, and its tininess. And it's an energy form that your individual consciousness or your soul can use as a conduit to experience this physical plane. Life itself inhabits your magic suits, what I call this, your magic suit, and your personality and your mind and your emotions to experience everything we experience. And most importantly, the energy field that is your personal body is included in the universal energy field of everything. So therefore, all bodies are good bodies. Now, we may have been taught that our bodies are not acceptable for one reason or another. They're too fat, they're too thin, they're too this or that, they're too tall, too short, too brown, too black, too white, too disabled or broken, just too much or too little, just too one thing or another, right? And we may have spent our entire lifetimes up until this moment holding our bodies up against some kind of ideal. Like, it's not ideal. So we may have been feeding a message to our body that it isn't acceptable just as it is, but this is an invitation to stop that and change the status quo relationship you have with your body. And I will also say that no matter what the question is, love is the answer. And this lesson is no exception. Spiritually, we know that every single thing in the universe is part of the one, necessary to complete the whole, the balance, the perfect, the order, the intelligence. It takes everything that exists, including our bodies, to make everything whole. Everything exists because life needs it to exist. And when things are no longer needed, they cease to exist. Therefore, your body is part of the divine pattern of perfection in this moment in time. Ernest Holmes also said, our body is part of the kingdom of God. Dieter talked about that on Wednesday night, about that word kingdom. The kingdom of God. Therefore, there is a spiritual pattern at the center of it. So your body is just as important to life as any other form in existence. And it is unique and beautiful just as it is. You are deserving of a harmonious relationship with your body. You're deserving of your own love, and your body is deserving of your own love. But kind of isn't that the message about everything in spirituality? Love, love, more love. That's what we teach. And it doesn't make sense to separate out your little individual body and set it aside as unlovable if we're on the path to loving everything and everyone else. So spiritual practice kind of applies to your body too. And I don't know anyone who fully loves and accepts their body except through spiritual practice. Maybe you're an exception. Please talk to me about that. Because our tendency is to focus on the aspects of our bodies that don't please us in some way, and it's a hard thought and habit pattern to break. So let's start by telling ourselves the truth. The saying is, there's no spot where God is not. Every day we're increasing our understanding and appreciation of that idea. There is no spot where God is not. Expanding our consciousness to embrace more and more of life as being holy and good. And I say every day because for me, it's a daily practice. And it has to be a daily practice because I don't know about you, but I'm trying to kind of reprogram my mind away from so many thoughts and ideas that I was exposed to as a young girl and as a young woman. I was growing up in fundamentalist Christianity in a country built on these Puritan ideas of chastity and modesty and deprivation, with constant messaging about what is appropriate and not appropriate when it comes to our bodies. And I can't imagine any of you missed those lessons, those puritanical yet subtle messages where children are to be seen and not heard. Poverty was a virtue. Abstinence from anything pleasurable was necessary to be pure enough for a very judging God. Certain kinds of music was unholy. It's kind of unfit music for a godly home. Bodies are to be covered in modesty and, of course, never touched, for goodness sake, right? And some teachings define what food you can and cannot consume, what clothes you can and cannot wear, what animals you can and cannot touch. And the list goes on and on and on. Religious thought is all over our ideas of virginity, marriage, sexuality, and more recently, gender expression, actually. Everything we do in our bodies, there's religious thought all over it. And quite frankly, I haven't met a whole lot of people who have completely freed themselves from these older mindsets. It's just so dominant in our culture, in our norms. And society pressures us to judge individuals who step outside the proper rules of conformity around these kinds of topics. Am I wrong? Right. So if we were programmed to believe that our bodies are sinful or dirty or something to be hidden or ignored, it takes some courage to break down those barriers we place between ourselves and our own bodies. And usually that barrier is one of shame. Feeling me? It's so typical to feel shame when our bodies show their humanness for others to see. Not everyone feels this, but a lot of us do. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So since I was taught that modesty was a virtue to a fault, and doing anything immodest was shameful, I've always had this strong reaction, this internal reaction of shame, when I witnessed someone else being immodest or kind of really showing off their body. And I've worked on this. I've really worked on it. But sometimes I still feel it like creeping up into my consciousness when I'm at the beach and I see people who are just kind of proud in their bodies and their minimal bathing suits, men and women just walking around feeling all confident and stuff, right? I used to be so judgmental about it. Now what it is I feel like that judgy shame has kind of slipped into kind of a feeling of admiration and maybe a little bit of envy, like how wonderful it would be to be so comfortable in your own skin and free of that internal messaging of shame would be amazing. And what I really find is interesting is that if the person has a body that society has labeled as beautiful or perfect, fewer people mind if they show it off. Like we just got done with a couple of weeks of the Olympics, and those were some scantiest, skimpily clad human bodies I've ever seen. But the pushback over that is minimal. I think there's some extreme groups that push back. But let me just say that the pushback over a Lizzo concert and all the backup dancers is much greater because there's a body shame thing going on, right? And what I want to say is beauty's in the eye of the beholder and shame is also in the eye of the beholder. It's really interesting. I think the difference between athletes and the Lizzo backup dancers has more to do with the perceived purpose behind the scanty clothes. Like we can tell ourselves, well, athletes are wearing that thing so they can go faster and be more proficient in their activity, and these people are dressing that way because they're just being naughty or they're being sexy or erotic or whatever, and somehow that's different. But is it really? Where does that come from? That's all inside of our heads. And if we're going to challenge the status quo, let's start challenging it inside our own minds, right? Let's start by telling ourselves the truth about what we're thinking about and judging. What if we give ourselves permission to view our magic suits and everyone else's magic suits as the miraculous gift given to each one of us by Spirit itself? Our souls were given a body to use, to explore the world on the human plane, to experience everything with our five senses, to interact with the physical world on many, many, many levels. Our bodies are a holy gift, and we're here to use them and enjoy them. Are you with me? So if our body's five senses were gifts, what is their purpose? Holmes says this: everyone needs the warmth and color, the imagination and feeling of a sense of intimacy with the creative spirit. Our intellect yearns toward it as naturally as a rose turns towards the sun. So the way I see it, our five senses have many purposes, both physical and spiritual, quite frankly. They're part of our survival mechanisms. That's a given. Without our senses warning us of potential danger, we would actually quickly be injured or die. But our senses are gifts for so much more than survival. Our senses are the gateways to joy and can lead us to a deeper connection with our souls. That's worth talking about this morning. I think all of our gifts were given to our souls to use while we're here on this earth. So right now, most of us are feeling a little bit of stress all around us because the human race is facing quite a few challenges right now. Overcoming differences so that we can live peacefully, or figuring out how to preserve the planet and cope with the changes that are happening. And that's not even counting the individual personal stuff we've all got going on, right? There's a lot going on. Well, I think our bodies are part of what we use to strengthen ourselves and to connect ourselves to the divine. Let me explain. Let's start with our eyes. Let's start with our vision. We were given the sense of vision to behold as much of this human plane as we possibly can. Yeah, we use the world to determine our eyes to see the world and determine if we're in danger. But society has given us many rules about what we should and should not see. Give yourself the gift of actually looking at everything with a neutral mind. Observe other forms without judgment and without making up a story about what you're looking at and why is it looking the way it's looking. Stop that for a minute and just notice. Notice what you feel inside when you're looking at a thing in creation, whether it's natural or man-made. When you're looking at a thing, notice what you feel. Does it spark joy? Does it spark fear or tranquility or curiosity or shame or anger or love, compassion, wonder, whatever it is that it sparks? Be aware of that. Basically, does it make you feel good or not? Try looking at things that you were taught you should not look at and question the motivation behind that rule. Then make a new decision for yourself. Embrace your sense of sight. Embrace it. Create a spiritual practice around looking with the internal eyes of God. Your eyes are the eyes of spirit looking out at your world. Behold the universe that is before you just for your enjoyment, growth, healing, and betterment. And as a spiritual practice, create visual experiences that express love to yourself, but also to other people around you. Delight your eyes and sense your connection to your soul through your sense of vision. Let's go on to the next sense. Let's talk about hearing. We were given the gift of hearing, not just to listen to the sounds of the physical plane. Of course, we're kind of listening for the lion in the jungle or the footsteps behind us or whatever. There's so much more. There's so much more. Listen with a sense of curiosity that I just talked about with our vision. Listen. Listen. What sounds give you positive vibrations, literally? Are there sounds that make you want to turn up the volume or sounds that make you want to mute it? Are there sounds that you avoid based on previous experiences with sound that perhaps you want to try again? Are there sounds that pull you closer? Or sounds that push you away? Are there sounds that you love that would uplift you if you experience them more? Know yourself from an auditory perspective and enjoy the spiritual essence of sound. Fall in love with sound again. Create a spiritual practice where you can use your internal ears of God and behold the universe all around you vibrating constantly with sound. And then make it your practice to flood your soul and the lives around you with beautiful sound. Can we talk about our sense of smell? We were given the sense of smell to experience the realm of the human plane too. Yep, we can smell spoiled food and save ourselves from getting sick, and we can smell gases that will make us sick, and we move away from things. Beyond survival, though, our nose can sniff out so much more, right? One of the squares in our Summer of Love activity just had the word scent on it. We were looking for different categories of our lives that made us feel love, and I asked each participant to identify a smell that evoked joy and love for them, and that list was delightful. Some of you had like someone special's perfume, or the smell of a person's house, or food cooking on the stove, or certain smells of nature or flowers or whatever. It was just a beautiful list of things to smell. So create a spiritual practice where you can use your internal nose of God to enjoy the totality of the smells of this universal human plane. And of course, we have taste. Yep, we know that we will quickly spit out things that will kill us if we can taste something that our bodies instinctively know is not for us. But beyond that, many people would say that their sense of taste is very important to them, comforting to them. Taste is such a personal experience, right? Nobody can convince me that something's going to taste good that I've already decided does not taste good. That whole cilantro thing is just a weird thing, I just got to say. I love cilantro, don't get me wrong, but I know some people will just think it's awful. But I'm hard-pressed to try something a second time if I didn't like it, the taste of it the first time. But I try not to carry those judgments too far, because I'm sure you can all think of things that you thought you didn't like, and then all of a sudden you develop a taste for them, right? As I say, some taste is acquired. But I believe that taste is far more than a survival mechanism, and it's more a source of joy. There's this mindfulness practice that we've done here a couple of times. Have you ever been here when we've really mindfully tasted little tiny morsels of things and really had a spiritual experience around the sense of taste? It's fabulous to do, but create a spiritual practice around tasting things, showing spirit a great time with all things yummy. And there's great value in expressing love to others using the sense of taste. And then we get to the sense of touch, which is what you've all been waiting for, so I might as well get there. There are more internal messages about this sense than all of the others. Every inch of our bodies is gifted with the sense of touch. And when we use the term sensuality, we're most often referring to the sense of touch, aren't we? Sensuality is about touch, but we are sensual creatures, and the earliest forms of religion set really strict boundaries around our bodies, primarily to control the sense of touch, primarily because it led to sexuality, okay? And touch is completely natural and pleasurable, but each one of us has an individual relationship to that truth. And I am here as your minister to encourage you to get in touch with the pleasure of touch and sexuality. Create a spiritual practice around allowing the God in you to be touched in as many beautiful ways as possible by exposing yourself to gorgeous textures and fabrics and elements in nature and sensations of all kinds, because human touch is critical for the survival of the body and the soul. And so I summarize this lesson. It's that pleasure is our birthright. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that human experience includes pleasure. And in the past, we may have equated our human experience as less than our spiritual experiences, perhaps demonizing completely the natural experiences and processes. But in doing so, we have denied ourselves the pleasure of having a human body, while also shaming ourselves for the desires and experiences that are not only natural, but are also positive and supportive of our divine nature. So it's time to return to wholeness, understanding that every human experience is an aspect of spirit. And the way to enlightenment, we're all seeking enlightenment, the way to enlightenment is not about denying our physical body of pleasure, but rather by embracing all that being human has to offer. Let's remember that it is our spiritual nature that is entwined with our humanness. Every aspect of life, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, are all part of our growth, and it all deserves our time, attention, energy, and love. And that means that everything we do as humans is inherently spiritual. If we believe, as we read in our statements of belief, declaration of principles, the eternal givingness, the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all, as stated by Ernest Holmes in our belief statements, then it stands to reason that sensuality is one of the ways that goodness, loving kindness, and givingness shows up. Deprivation of the senses is not wholeness. Live a sensual, passionate, and pleasurable life for God's sakes. And I want to close with a quote from Rumi, the Sufi mystic poet. He said, "With passion pray, with passion make love, with passion eat and drink and dance and play. Why look like a dead fish in this ocean of God?" And in, and in the spirit of not looking like a dead fish, let's remember that the Pope said the word was celebrate. Will you pray with me? Let's come together and know this. Take that laughter, that joy, and feel the source of that deep within, knowing that that is spirit within. Spirit is everywhere present in every cell in our being, and every expression of our life as a human on this planet. And I know that as spiritual beings, having a human experience is a good thing. And I give deep gratitude for my magic suit and for the magic suit of each one in this room, knowing that they are gifts from the divine. And so it is. And so it is.